Hi, welcome back to this course on serverless architectures and best practices. In the last section, we discussed about what serverless is, which are vendor solutions, and what we can do to start with a new serverless project. In this section, we are going to dive deeply into serverless use cases and how we can migrate from a monolithic architecture to a serverless or microservice architecture. Then we will start discussing with this video about if serverless is a one-size-fits-all solution or not, to move to how we can migrate from monoliths to serverless, and then we will discuss which are the common pains and issues when dealing with serverless frameworks and serverless functions. Then we will discuss a final point about whether or not serverless can be vendor independent. In this video, we will discuss about whether or not serverless is a one-size-fits-all solution for your purposes. And in particular, we are going to talk about what makes serverless a feasible approach and what are the benefits of serverless beyond technological topics. Then we are going to discuss about serverless and microservices and whether or not there are differences between these two design patterns. Then we move discussing use cases that are well suited for serverless and scenarios that are not the best according to a serverless approach. So when you talk about serverless in this video, you can think not only about serverless technologies or serverless design patterns, but also about serverless state of mind. Because if it's true that not having to manage an infrastructure is a good benefit coming from serverless, it is not the only thing. Serverless is much more, because serverless pushes you to keep and maintain smaller code base, which translates into independent function life cycles that you have to manage, and also the separation of domains. Domain separation is a great point that rise to the attention to developers in the last few years, because it allows you to define which are the boundaries of your software. Let's give you an example. If you have an e-commerce platform, it has many different business functions that you have to build in this platform. Some belongs to catalog, some to cart, some to payment gateway, and some other safe to the invoicing service. And if you adopt a monolithic approach, you build every one of these functions coupled to the other. But if you split the domains of your project, of your e-commerce project, you will have a domain for catalog, a domain for cart, another for payment gateway, and another for invoicing. And these domains are going to talk to each other using well-defined and standard interfaces. So domain separation is really a great achievement you have to target when you develop for your big projects. And the final point is that serverless and the serverless state of mind also enforces coordination over orchestration. So you do not have a single project, a single service orchestrating everything in your software, in your platform. You have the result coming from the coordination of many different services. So to someone, it could look like that there is something magic in serverless, but it is not true. It cannot be far from the truth, because you have to remember that there is a law which is named the law of translating issues, and it says that often you are not solving an issue, but you are translating an issue to another that is less painful for your domain, for your project, for your purpose. So serverless changes coupling issues which are really painful into communication issues that can be afforded and solved, gaining back separation of concerns, testability of your code, and composition capabilities. So, to be completely honest, we can say that serverless is at the very end of the day another way of making microservices. Please let me be clear. Not every microservice architecture is a serverless architecture, but if you write your code and your architecture well, every serverless architecture is a microservice architecture. So microservices are a well-known architectural partner that provides a huge number of benefits, but comes with some limits that you have to consider. In particular, some constraints regarding the communication issues, because when you have a lot of services, you have to coordinate between them, you have to exchange messages between them. Then you can also have some of your service chain, some service that can fail. So you have to handle service failure, and in particular, partial service failure. And on the other side, you cannot always be in the condition to bring your project and decouple every function that you have in your project, because basically you could also start refactoring a legacy project which has been very coupled within itself. So it cannot be so easy to decouple a legacy project. Then we have a huge number of serverless use cases, and serverless is great, and you should definitely consider that if your project has many different business functions that you have to address, because as we saw before, serverless enforces domain separation. Also, it is great, and you should adopt it if you have many endpoints, but not all of them have the same access rate, the same usage rate. So say you have a couple of endpoints that are used much more than others, you can consider splitting that into microservices and into serverless, because you can scale them up and down independently. Serverless is great also if your team is distributed across different cities, different countries or time zones, and if you have many teams working on the same project. Think about Facebook, in which you have a lot of teams working on the same Facebook page, on the same output. A requirement can change over time in a serverless architecture, in a serverless project, because you have smaller functions to maintain, and you can change them quickly over time in order to match new requirements. And also can be considered if you cannot afford an IT department, or if you are starting a new project from scratch, because you can have all the benefits of serverless and reduce dramatically the amount of drawbacks. This is the reason why many companies adopted serverless proficiently. They have been successful. Just let me give you some example. Netflix moved from a monolithic to a microservice architecture, and in the last few years, they moved a lot of microservices which were deployed as containers within their platform to serverless, because they lifted the heavy weight of managing the container. Then Splunk is a company that provides you analytics and metrics monitoring of your services, analyzing logs, and if data processing is your thing, serverless can greatly benefit you, because it comes with a lot of services that reason and that work in a serverless way. Bustle is a media company which has 52 millions of access of users on their website each month, and they built completely their platform on serverless paradigm using AWS Lambda. Nike has a lot of serverless services which bake their devices, their website, their one-shot landing pages, and so on, and they release them quickly every day into production. But there are also something that you have to consider, and some drawbacks and some use cases which are not well suited for serverless. You should think about using serverless or not if you are maintaining a legacy monolithic project, because probably you made some not so good choice within your project that now you have to split into smaller services, and this could be a really expensive way. Then if you have one single team working on a single code base and your requirements doesn't change over time, probably for one single team, having one code base, one set of services, packed them all together is the best way to maintain them, to handle them. And also, if you are building a solution for a well-known business case in which expenses and costs are the only voice, are the only thing that you have to consider, and you're not to consider life cycle or communication or integration with third-party services, probably serverless couldn't be your choice or your best choice. So there are also huge and important names that avoided serverless. First of all, let me talk about WordPress. WordPress is the de facto solution for blog management and a lot of use cases that have been built over WordPress, and is still a monolith. So you have to deploy WordPress as a monolithic solution. You have no way of splitting WordPress on many different services. You have just to do a lot of work to split WordPress on a multi-tier architecture. For Magento, is exactly the same. Magento is an e-commerce platform, so it can be deployed effectively on a cluster for vertical scalability. But you have to forget about microservices or serverless. Joomla is a framework for building web applications and has the same constraints, being a whole monolith that can be deployed. It provides a lot of easy to use and fast to use functions, but scalability is definitely an issue. Even GitLab, that we have seen in the last video, the last section, is a monolith because it is Ruby on Rails and forces a monolithic approach. This doesn't mean that you cannot build microservices on Ruby on Rails, but it means that the architecture of your Ruby on Rails suggests and empowers building monolithic solutions. So, which is the difference in being well-written code base or bad-written code base is not directly matching to serverless versus monoliths. You can have monoliths that are well-written, that are well-code based, and it's maintained and incremented and built effectively over time. They just stick everything together. On the other side, if you want a lot of guarantees, if you want a lot of things going down the way that we have seen before and benefiting for the topics and the benefits that we have seen before, you can just avoid monoliths. You can just move, if you are on a monolith right now, you can move to serverless.